This is Saeed, the Codogrammer, and in this video called What to Watch for Developers, I have, as a service to the community, scoured the depths of YouTube to find videos that I think would be interesting and informative, or at the very least entertaining for developers. All right, so before we continue, I have to warn you that my cat is asleep behind me and he has a tendency to snore, sometimes quite loudly, so hopefully the microphone won't pick it up, but just in case it does, it's not me, it's the cat. And the other thing is that you do not need to make any notes or anything like that, because I will put links to all the videos mentioned in this video in the description box below. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so the first one I want to recommend is the Functional Programmer's Toolkit by Wlaschin. Sorry if I mispronounced the surname, but he is a developer, an author, and an architect. He runs the F# programming website, F# for funandprofit.com. By the way, F# is a multi-paradigm programming language if you want to check that out. So this talk is basically about functional programming, but the main thing he does is to dispel the idea that it's initially more complex than other paradigms, say object-oriented programming. And he does that by describing how a lot of the terminology associated with other programming paradigms like OOP is also complex and confusing if you're looking at it for the first time. He then goes on to define a lot of that terminology used in functional programming in very simple terms. So I think if you're new to functional programming, or you just want to learn a functional programming language or understand the concepts, this is a really, really good place to start and will set you up with a good foundation. All right, so next up is Loom is Looming by Jose Paumard. Now, he has a PhD in applied maths and computer science. He is a DevRel at Oracle in the Java team, and he produces some really good content on YouTube. So in this video, after a quite lengthy introduction, about 5 minutes or so, he talks about something called Project Loom. Now, Project Loom is a pretty big deal. It's not actually out yet, but it seeks to improve on concurrent programming. I won't go into detail about what Loom is because you can learn all of that from this talk. But in the talk, he goes through the history, not just what's new, but also how we got here. And I think that really helps make sense of things when you understand where things were, why they evolved in a certain way, what were the decisions taken along the way. I think that's really helpful to understand why things are headed in a certain direction. And in this talk, you get to see not just Loom on the surface, but some of the internals and why certain decisions were taken. It's a long talk, but I think it's worth the investment if you are a Java developer and you want to kind of gear up for what's coming. And then it goes into a very useful travel agency scenario to help explain things. All right, so just before we continue, if you don't want to be the last person to know about important and timely videos on YouTube for developers, make sure you hit subscribe below. It's completely free and well worth it. All right, let's get on with the video. All right, so next up is Software Craftsmanship vs. Software Engineering by Dave Farley. Now, Dave Farley wrote a very well-known and well-received book called Continuous Delivery, which you can check out. He's a former director of innovation at ThoughtWorks, a very well-respected and known software development house. He's also one of the authors of the Reactive Manifesto. He's basically someone who has a lot of actually really useful insight into how software and software development works, and it seems like he's happy to share that on YouTube. All right, so this video is about programming, software craftsmanship, etc. But again, he talks about some of the history of how we got to the current state of affairs. And there were a lot of things in there which I didn't know, so I found it really useful. His channel is just generally a great educational resource. His videos are not about low-level coding, but about concepts and practices and that kind of thing. And I think this talk will, at the very least, make you have quite a good think about how you approach your work. All right, so next up is Java 8 to 18, the most important changes in the Java platform. Now, this is by someone called Aurelio Garcia Ribeiro. Again, hopefully I didn't mispronounce that too badly. He's a senior director of product management at Oracle, so he knows a thing or two about Java. And in this video, Aurelio goes through all of the major changes that happened in Java since Java 8. Now, a lot of people really reskilled around the time Java 8 was released because of the major changes that came in with streams and lambdas. But now with the more frequent release cadence, the 6-month release cadence, unless you're actively busy writing Java code, you can more easily miss some of the changes that come along in a particular release. So if you find yourself busy on a coding project and not really up to date with the latest features of Java. So this video does a really neat job of consolidating the major changes in one place. All right, so next up is a video from one of my favorite tech YouTubers, Jeff Delaney, and the title is Stop Calling Fleets a VS Code Killer. Jeff Delaney is a Google developer expert, but most of all, he makes very informative and very entertaining YouTube videos. The channel is Fireship with over 1 million subscribers, so you might already know about it. You might already be subscribed. Now, if you're not subscribed to Fireship, I would highly recommend it. His content is pretty incredible because it can be really informative as well as entertaining at the same time, and I think that's quite a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to educate and entertain at the same time. Anyway, this particular video is about Fleet, the new multi-language IDE from JetBrains, which is now in public preview, so you can get your hands on it. But he goes through it in a very funny and easily digestible way. Since the content is funny, his general content on his channel is quite entertaining. It's really easy to kind of binge on it if you're bored. But all of the content is short and sweet, and most of the videos are just around a few minutes. So I think you'll really enjoy his channel. All right, so next up is Quarkus for Kotlin developers. This is by Justin Lee, who's a principal software engineer at Red Hat. Now, this is a really interesting talk where they work through an example using Quarkus Quarkus and Kotlin. One thing that I didn't know about was that Quarkus actually has a generator project website, much like start.spring.io, which is really cool. But then it goes into a lot more detail. They demo the Quarkus Maven job, which gives you terminal type options, which is very, very cool. But essentially, it's quite long, but it works through a whole example and they go into a lot of detail. So if you're interested in Quarkus or Kotlin or both, I think this is a really interesting video to watch. All right, so next up we have Google front-end interview with a front-end expert. Now this is by Clement Mielescu. He's a former Google engineer and former Facebook engineer and a co-founder of Algo Expert, which you've no doubt seen the ads for. Now for me, who's someone who is a primarily back-end developer, this was really, really interesting. You get to see what a pretty realistic interview is like. And in this video, he interviews Connor Ardman, who is an ex-Facebook software engineer. So you can see the thought process and how he responds and the feedback that he gets. So I find it really interesting, even though I'm not a front-end engineer. All right, so next one is From Zero to DevOps Engineer. This is the DevOps roadmap for your specific background. Now, this is by Nana Janashia. She is a DevOps engineer and she runs Tech World with Nana. You've probably seen the videos if you're in this kind of tech programmer developer space. And in this particular video, she goes through the different routes to becoming a DevOps engineer, but she breaks that down by what that looks like for your current role. So for example, if you're a sysadmin or a tester, what your route to DevOps would look like. So if DevOps is a direction that you want to move into, this is definitely worth checking out. I have a few friends who've moved in that direction and are quite happy. I did a bit of DevOps myself, but personally I'm more of a developer than a DevOps engineer. So if you're interested in DevOps and whether you're very technical or not very technical, this is definitely a really good video to start with. All right, folks, thanks for watching. And if you found any part of this video at all useful, make sure you let me know by hitting the like button. And until next time.